Hello, Richardo. Welcome to our new podcast. How are you today?
Okay. What's up, Nico? What's good with you, baby man? Hey, we back again. And we running off your topic today, man. So what we got?
Yeah, we are, man. What do you think about corruption in the sense of not just politicians, but people in power, just people in a position of authority? What do you think corruption is? How it's bad? How it affects people? When does it affect people? How does it benefit some people? Everything. What are your thoughts on corruption?
All right. All right. Someone being corrupt. Ideals of corruption, causation, whatever. All right, corruption. So corruption has to be in the space of integrity, expectation, some rule, some type of rule structure, for there to be the ideas of corruption. So in our human society, in our architecture, social architecture, our work constructs, social constructs, we have certain expectations of a flow. So in that regard, we have certain expectations of what is beneficial to the individual, beneficial to the group, beneficial to the overall operation. And what happens is, I think corruption comes when a person, for whatever reason, goes against the best interests of the overall organization, the group, or even sometimes themselves, to satisfy whatever is the catalyst for making them make those decisions. So I think corruption.
Wait, how can you be corrupt against yourself? What do you mean by that?
Oh, how can you be corrupt against yourself? You could be morally corrupt in your actions against yourself by choosing actions that are not beneficial to your overall well-being. So I'm gonna say it like this: you use drugs, drug addiction. It causes corruption of the mind and corruption of the body. But you have to willfully choose, a lot of times choose to use a drug, whether it be prescription or it be illicit drugs. But the very use of it, illicit use and habitual and addictive use of it, will cause a form of corruption. It will, like I say, it will corrupt the mind, it will corrupt the body, and it's
Oh,
exactly. Or you go about corruptible behaviors. So lying,
corruptible behaviors.
yeah, lying, cheating, stealing. Those are short-term aspects to get you short-term gains. So you lie to get out of trouble, you steal something, you cheat to get ahead. But ultimately, you're creating a habitual cycle of behaviors that ultimately can cause your downfall. Or you have to double down on the lie, triple down on the lie. You got to continue stealing, or you have to continue cheating in a way that you become morally bereft. And that's the lifestyle you have to live by if that's the path you choose. So corruption can be an instance, and it could be a lifestyle. But you choose corruption in a space based on the antithesis to integrity. So, like I said, there's expectations. If you have an expectation of a certain aspect, a certain set of morality, a certain set of principles, and that becomes a norm, and an individual chooses to go against that for whatever reason, whether it's a goal of gain or just to see the whole world burn, or that's just the way they believe. Sometimes there's morality, there's immorality, there's being immoral, and there's amoral. Amoral people just don't believe that they're doing something wrong. Immoral people know they are doing something wrong, but it's based on an ideal moral construct, or certain expectations or certain norms. So that's my take on it.
And how can something like that negatively impact people's lives? Like, say, for example, in other countries. Not I'm saying that not that I'm saying that it doesn't happen here. Of course it does. It happens everywhere. But say in other countries, how you can tell that corruption really takes a toll on everybody, and how, you know, there's some people who really live in a horrible situation. And in my opinion, the situation of these countries, and therefore these people, is corruption. Because corruption, which I think, when we talk about politics and, you know, and all that, I think corruption comes from what do you call it, a huge stupid wealth gap. That wealth gap is going to cause people to go in survival mode. Survival mode causes you to go be corrupt, because now you really don't care. Like, you need money, and you want it that bad that you start doing things that go against your ethics and your morals. So now that corruption leaves the people who are attacked by it in a worse position, and then that negative cycle begins. You know, so what do you kind of think about that?
All right, so I'm glad you touched on your explanation of corruption. Now, corruption as a concept of say socioeconomic indifference, socioeconomic strife. That's one place where corruption is often found. But if we're looking at the concept of corruption in itself, corruption is a human element, and it comes from our having competition, and like I said, it comes from our structure as our social structure. So integrity, honor, courage, all those descriptive words, those expectations. When you act against those, especially for your own betterment, it basically is saying that you're corrupt. You could be, or certain things can influence you to become corrupted. So let's look on a scale of something a little bit more not political. Let's look at religion. To be corrupt in regards to religion is to basically preach one doctrine but live a different way, especially to live
like being a hypocrite.
Being a hypocrite, but even taking it further than that. So if you are, say, in the church and you are leading this big ministry and you're preaching and say God this and God that and all this, and you know, yea all people and come to me and all that, but you know, on the side you are basically laundering money, stealing from the parishioners, you're funding illicit trade, drug trade, you're doing everything, you're going against the very fundamentals of, say, your said religion that you're preaching, then you are corrupt. Or those situations with the Catholic Church when they were, you know, molesting young boys. That is directly morally and ethically corrupt, not just in our society, but specifically against the religion that they are teaching. So in that dynamic, they are corrupt because of the expectations and the parameters set by that group. Those individuals, there are individuals within their confines that are directly acting against their own morals, especially when they're in positions of power. And power gives you access, and with access and also authority, corruption is a lot easier to be found, because it's hard for you to be held accountable. So yes, you're going to often see that in money. You're going to often see that in politics. Like you said, when people are put in a hard situation and they go into survival mode, okay, their scruples will change and they'll be more morally flexible. But what about the person that is a billionaire and they have $1 billion company and they're shorting the stock, and they're basically, you know, there's aggressive trades, and they're basically trying to undercut companies and put other companies out of business and calling it, well, that's just the free market. The wealth gap that you talked about. Why is it that when we crunch the numbers, we can afford everything, but somehow we can't afford good education, we can't afford clean water, we can't afford clean air, and we harmfully go against our best interests in certain increments. For what reasons? For what? Corruption, whether it be political corruption, whether it be corruption amongst corporations. You know, what makes those who are in affluent places, what makes them corrupt? Access and authority. The access and authority allows humans to be truly what they are. We're animals, and what we do is we take advantage of situations where we have power and others are weak. If it wasn't for humans having the power of logic and compassion and a couple of those other confines, we would be a plague upon we would be a greater plague upon the planet, because the only thing that keeps us in check a lot of times is natural limitations of life, health and risk, but also our morals, adhering to a set of standards, a structure, certain parameters, keeping within that keeps us from going back, to the dark ages. So corruption is on both sides of the spectrum, whether the lowest, where it's survival mode, or up amongst the most lofty. They're some of the most corrupt because they don't have to be. They're comfortable. They're affluent. They can make things a lot easier for those who are in that struggle, but they choose not to. So, yeah.
So that was interesting how you said how they're more corrupt because they don't have to be. You mean one was more push for it, and the other one kind of does it somewhat by choice, right?
Well, what validates what? Go ahead.
If you're already up here, if I'm already up here, and I really don't need anything, then what's really corruption get me if I'm already to a great position in my life and I'm super ultra high net worth and a billionaire,
All right. But all right, that's a great question. But put yourself in that situation. Okay, what did you have to do to get to that position? Think about the struggle it takes to climb the ladder. Think about some of the deals you have to make. Think about some of the sacrifices you have to make. Think about some of the things and maybe some of the people you have to sacrifice along the way. Think about morally when you come into this, what things you pledged that you weren't going to do. What things you said you were never going to compromise on. What things you said that you would never find yourself doing. And as you climb on the ladder, justification starts coming in. And you now say, well, I'm making $1 million, but I really want to make 10 million. And you set a goal, but to get to that goal, you have to be a little bit more flexible. You end up maybe doing things and justifying them later on. And then when you get to a lofty position, now that you have affluence, power, and authority and access, what's to stop you? And who's to stop you? If you have the power to indulge yourself, you have to basically keep yourself in check, because what parameters are going to keep you in check if not you? And sometimes when people get access and power, and it's almost like money. Money's a conduit. Money's just a form of energy. And when you give someone that ability, you will see their true selves. And that's why I think you see corruption at the highest level. At the lower levels, where people are fighting and squabbling amongst themselves, they might not have the space, the time, and the concern about others. That's a liability. It's a liability to make yourself vulnerable around those who will take that opportunity to take from you, to take advantage of you, things of that nature. That level of corruption is basically situational corruption that might lead to a lifestyle of corruption. But what happens to the person who, like I said, who's not at risk, who's not threatened? Their threats might be different. They might be threatened by other high-powered individuals, but for the most part, what threats do they face? They're probably not facing serious threats from their employees or their consumers, or maybe the federal government. They might not be all in facing threats from those individuals. And also, these structures also have rampant corruption within them as well. Humans are humans, man. That we are advantageous and capitalistic creatures, and that goes back. And I think we'll have this conversation if we haven't touched on it at any other point about capitalism. There's nothing wrong with capitalism. Yeah, we're gonna talk about isms at another date, but there's nothing wrong with capitalism. It's just when capitalism goes unchecked and the negative aspect of the human element gets attached to it, and you get parasitic or you get predatory capitalism that will consume and consume and consume, not thinking about replenishment, or will feed on those who need to basically supply the system, and they end up killing the host, which is the market. So it's things of that nature in regards to corruption. Corruption, I think, is a human element, man. It basically just is the opposite spectrum of integrity, accountability, honor code. Corruption is just the opportunity to be opposite of that.
I think also corruption, and at least at the very wealthy people level, it's one way, not the way, but one way to preserve your power and influence. Because if I'm a super multi-billionaire and I can buy a senator with what to me is probably crumbs on the floor, probably I can just give you $2 million and then just multiply a senator's income just like that. It gives me a lot of power. It shows people that I have a lot of power, and it also exercises that power. Number one, and number two, also with corruption. Again, now I'm not saying this is the way people move up the ladder, but for those who do use it, I think also corruption is a way to. I forgot what I was going to say. Corruption is a way to, since these people use it to go up the ladder and to keep their influence, I think they also use it as a way to not get left behind. And let me explain myself. So for example, when say Apple, which we'll talk about in another episode, Apple keeps going up, Apple and Amazon, whatever, they keep going up. They don't know what to do anymore. Apple wants to come up with a car. They want to come up with this. They want to come up with that. They keep moving away more and more from their core business. Just like Amazon now is doing groceries. They want now the New York Times. That has nothing to do with Amazon, but they just keep expanding. And because what happens if they don't keep expanding? A new guy with a new company and a new better idea is going to make more profits. And all of these people who are supporting me, now they want the hot new thing, and they just move over there. So corruption is one of the tools that some of these people use to stay there, because it's either I feel like they see it as, if I don't keep going up, I can only go down. There's no me staying here. I gotta keep delivering. I gotta keep driving. I gotta do this.
Yeah, that's a very prevalent theory in regards to business expansion. Now, not taking anything away from that, because I would say that is accurate. Corruption, let's say structural corruption, right? With those in power, whether it be management or corporations or government. Well, like I said, it's part of a human construct. So humans involved, this corruption has been around for ages, in structures of power, businesses, political structures, unions, whatever. These become corrupt once you start adding authority, access, and power, and money, which grants those as well. Corruption will come. Corruption comes with leverage. If you can leverage in, move up, keep yourself relevant. These companies want to stay relevant, right? Amazon, Apple want to stay relevant. Okay. I don't know specifically their business practices, on the ground floor, but to stay relevant, companies take certain actions to limit their bottom line, minimize their workforce. They might outsource. They might take questionable business practices to make sure they stay relevant and strong in the market. Companies do that because they know that a need will be, the need will always be there, but will they be the ones to fulfill the needs of the consumers? So that's just an unending cycle. What happens is, we can talk about shareholders. You can talk about, those, seeking profit in regards to the company, whether it falls, hedging and all of that. That's a lot of extra conversation. But ultimately, what happens is, like I said, corruption is a human aspect, and the game of corruption is always being played. So when you come into the game, business, politics, The structure is already there. Unless you're going to tear it all down and rebuild it, of which corruption is like a cockroach. It's going to find its way. They're going to find a way in. You have to really look at it and say, okay, what are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? Where you're willing to bend to know that success will come with some level of bending. You're going to get dirty in some of these games. That's just how the game is played. And when it comes into business, I used to tell my brother this when we was coming up, bro, to get to a point where you win on both ends, you're going to have to slit someone's throat. You're going to have to hang someone. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to break through certain levels of business, because that's how they play the game. Same thing with politics. We have politicians that we could go through the line, regardless of Republican, Democrat, whatever. Some people are, they are integritists. They don't get messy. They don't put up no false flags or straw man. They're pretty legit individuals. They stick pretty much to basically the statutes, and they stick to the line. But you got to understand, they understand the realm in which they work. They understand the game in which they play. And they know that money's involved, power is involved, access is involved, authority is involved, corruption is involved. So to do that, you got to understand to some degree that your shoes are going to get dirty. Your pants are going to get dirty. You might get waist deep and get all dirty. Do you get your face dirty? Do you get your soul dirty? How far do you take it to really go in? Because there's some decent companies out there that basically says, we're not going to hurt our people for profits. And some companies have done well, but other companies might not go as far, but it just really depends.
You're cutting off really now.
Yeah, you froze hard, bro.